Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's me, your fashion teacher IJ, and here is IJ Designs. On today's tutorial, we're going to learn how to cut and sew an A-line dress. It will be a maxi one, it will be a long one. So we're going to learn how to cut and sew it step by step. I would like to say a very big thank you to my subscribers, both old and new subscribers. You all are the best. You are welcome on board. Now, let's get started. I'm going to make use of this beautiful lace material. It's a cord lace. I'm going to make use of it, and that is the lining. It's going to be apart. The lace is going to be apart, and the lining is going to be apart. And also, this A-line dress that we're making is going to have a cold shoulder sleeve. The sleeve is going to be cold shoulder sleeve. So without wasting time, let's get drafting. Now I have placed my materials. In drafting an A-line dress, you need the largest part of your body to determine how to fold your material. So you make use of the largest parts of your body. If it is your bust or your hip, the largest part of your body determines how you can fold your material. So now the largest part of this person I'm making this cloth is the hip, and I've used the hip to fold the material. So now we are going to insert our measurements. First, because it is a lace material, I don't want it to be moving. I fold it in two. That is it. I have four now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I fold the front and back together. I fold the front and back together. So I'm going to cut both of them together because it's a free gown. It's an A-line gown. It's a free gown. So being a free gown, I fold it together. It doesn't have zip at the back, so I'm going to cut it together. So now let us insert our measurement. First, at the beginning here, you draw a line. That is where you will start to insert your measurements. Now I'm going to draw a line here. This is white, so I'm using blue to mark it so that you can see it. I'm using blue to mark it so that you can. So now I'm going to start inserting our measurements. What is the shoulder? We are working with shoulder 16. That is 8. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So I'm going to insert my 8 here plus seam allowance. That is 8.5. Then I'm going to come down also by 8.5. I'm going to come down by 8 because when you cut it and sew, if you cut it at 8, then when you are sewing, you take your ½ inch allowance to sew. But when you cut it at 8.5, when you are sewing, it's going to be 9. So now I'm going to come down by 8. And also here, I'll come down by 8 inches. Then I'll now take 8.5 like I did here. Then I'll give it a straight line. Now, the next thing to insert, we are working on the vertical measurement. The shoulder to the chest line, which is where you are going to draft your armhole, is 8 inches. From there, I'll go down to the waist. We don't need the bust or the under bust. It's not needed here because it's a free gown. So I'm going to go to the waist, and the waist we are working with, shoulder to the waist, is 18. So I'm going to mark 18 here. Then shoulder to the hip is 22. I'm going to mark 22. And also on this side, I'm going to mark 18. And also I'm going to mark 22. Then let's make it into a straight line. And what is the length of this gown we are working with? The length of the gown is a long gown is 59. So let's measure our length from the shoulder, from here the shoulder, length 59. I'm going to draw it up so that we're going to get our length. It's almost the length that we have. Okay, now let's continue. We have gotten the length of the gown we are making. So now the next thing is to insert our horizontal measurements. Now let's insert our horizontal measurements. What is the bust we are working with? The bust is 42. And before then, let's determine our shoulder slope. The opening, I'm going to use 3.5. Or I'm going to use 3 because it's a lace material, it has many openings. And I'm going to come down. The depth of the we are working is 6 inches. I want it to be 6 inches. I also mark 3 at this side. Also 3 here. The depth is 6 and the length is 6 and the depth is 3 inches. So let's connect it. And from here, the 8.5, let's determine our shoulder slope. You come down by 1 inch, then you connect it to the 3 here. That is the opening of the neck. Can you see it? Now, you determine your armhole. I'm left with 7, half of 7 from the 1 inch that we came down from to the chest line is 7. So half of 7 is 3.5. Then 3.5 here. From that 3.5, I will now go in by half an inch. Then I'll connect it with my arm. Now, as you can see, I have inserted some of the measurements of the maxi dress that we are making. I've inserted the vertical measurements from the shoulder, from the starting point that we marked our line to the chest line is 8 inches. From the chest shoulder to here is 18 inches, which is the waist. And here is from shoulder to the hip is 22. And from shoulder to the length of the gown, which is 59. So I have inserted it. As you can see, the length is 59. That is here. I've inserted it. That's the length, 59 here. So now we are going to insert the horizontal measurements. The horizontal measurements we are going to insert, we are going to start with the bust. Remember, in making an A-line dress, you are free to add as many inches you want to add depending on how free you want it to be. If you don't want it to be too free, you less the inches that you are going to add. When you want it to be free, you add more inches. So this, I'm going to add minimum of 4 inches to whatever I am doing. So now, the chest that we are working with, that is the bust that we are working with, is bust 42. 42, I'm going to add it extra 4 inches because I want it to be free. So 46 divided by 4 is going to give me 11.5. So here I mark my 11.5. Here is 11.5. I mark 11.5 plus 1 inch seam allowance. I'm using 1 inch as seam allowance. So here in the waist we are working with is waist 37. 37 divided by 4 is going to give us 9.5. 9.5 is here. Then because I want it to be free, I will add extra 1.5 inch. That is 11. It's going to give me 11 plus 0.5 inch seam allowance. That is here. That is here. Can you see it? And the hip we are working with is hip 45. 45 divided by 4. 45 divided by 4 is 11.5. 11.5, I'm going to also add it 1.5 inch because I want it to be free also. So 11.5, I'm going to have 13 inches here. 13 inches plus 1 inch seam allowance is here. See, so this 14 inches that I have here from the hip, this 14 inches that I have here from the hip, I'm going to add it extra 5 inches for the down part of it because it's an A-line dress. So at the down part of it, I'm going to add 5 inches as the allowance. I want it to flow, and also 1 inch allowance, that is 20 inches. So at the down part of it, I'm going to add 20 inches. That is this line. This is 19. This is 19 inches plus 1 seam allowance, 20 inches. Can you see it? That is here. So now let's connect our line. Then turn your hip. Then from this hip now, I'll connect it, the down part of it. Do you see it? So now remember, at the neck area, I'm going to use 3 inches. The shoulder we are working with is 16. You divide it by 2, you have 8 plus seam allowance 8.5. That is this 8.5 here. And I came down also by 8, not 8.5, because when it come down by 8.5, when you sew it, it becomes 9 because you are going to take an extra 0.5 inch. So I stop at 8. But here I also got my 8.5 to make it a straight line. That is this straight line here. So the opening of the neck I'm working with is 3 inches. Because it's a lace material, it has a lot of opening, so I don't want to open it a lot. So it's 3 inches, and the length of it is 6 inches. So I want it to be a little bit down. So I now curve it. Can you see it? Then to determine the shoulder slope, I came down by 1 inch here. From the 3 inches here of the opening, I connect to the shoulder slope. Can you see it? And from after the shoulder slope of 1 inch, I'm left with 7 inches here at the chest. So this 7 inches, I divide it by 2, I have 3.5. From this 3.5, I come in by 3/4 inch, and from there I connect it as my armhole, the front armhole. See? Connect it as the front armhole, and this is the back armhole. Remember on the shoulder side to add extra 1/2 inch allowance here. Go up by 1/2 inch for seam allowance by the shoulder, and also here. Then you connect it. That is the shoulder allowance. Have you seen it? Now our A-line has formed. Can you see it? The next thing now is to cut it. When you get to the shoulder, don't cut the front armhole. First, you cut the back armhole. Now I have cut the back armhole. That's the front armhole. Later, I will remove this and cut the front armhole. Now the neckline. What is the neckline? Well, the type of neckline you want, you can choose. 4-corner neckline, canoe neckline, V neckline, any neckline of your choice is advisable. So I'm going to use the round neck line. In the front, the round neckline. Then at the back, I'm going to do it by, I'm going to take 3 inches at the back, or let me take 2.5 at the back. So now I'm going to cut the back first. I'm going to cut the back first. Because it's a very strong material to cut out the front neckline. That is the front neckline, and that's the back neckline. Now let's cut the front armhole. Now I've cut the front armhole, but because this is going to be a cold shoulder sleeve, later we are going to go in by 1 inch from the armhole here. We are going to come in by 1 inch to trim it off so that it can relax on the shoulder. It can be okay on the shoulder. It doesn't need to come out much because it's a cold shoulder sleeve. So later we are going to trim off 1 inch to make it to relax on the shoulder. But for now, we let it so. So now let's see. We are going to cut our sleeve. You can cut it as a normal sleeve and after that trim off some inches, or you can cut it as an off-shoulder sleeve. But I'm going to cut it as an off-shoulder sleeve. So now I need my cap's height. And the cap's height I'm working with is 4 inches. 4 inches. How do I arrive at it? I divide the bust by 12 and add 1/2 inch allowance. That is 4 inches. The bust is 12. 12 divided by, the bust is 42. 42 divided by 12 is 3.5 plus 1/2 inch is 4. So I've put down my 4 inches here and also put down my 4 inches here. So what is the shoulder that I'm working with? The shoulder is 8. So plus 1/2 inch allowance of 8 plus 1 inch allowance is 9. That is, I'll mark my 9 here. And what's the opening I'm working with? I'm working in with 4.5 plus 1/2 inch allowance, that is 5. So from here I'll connect to here. So from this 5 here, I'll connect to my 9 inches here. You see it? From the 9 inches that we got from the half of the shoulder, then I connect it to the 5 inches at the upper side of it to determine the sleeve. So now what is the opening? That is the opening of the sleeve. That is the part here, the opening of the sleeve. The opening we are working with is 14. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So I'm going to mark here 7 plus 1 seam allowance. That is 8. So I'm going to connect it. So this is our sleeve. Our sleeve have been derived. So let's cut it out. So I'm going to use this sleeve now to cut the next one. The 2 sleeves have been cut out. Do you see it? That's the sleeve, because it's going to be a cold shoulder sleeve. So it's going to be attached somewhere here. That's the sleeve. So the 2 have been cut out. So the next thing now is to cut out the lining. I'm working on this lining as an off-shoulder pattern. That is what I'm working with. So because I'm going to put it stripe at the upper part of it. I'm going to put it stripe at the upper part of it. So now the measurement you are seeing here, this is the starting point, and this is our armhole measurement. That is the chest line, and this is the waist. The waist is 18, the armhole is 8, the hip is 22, and the length of the lining is 50 plus 1 inch seam allowance is 51. So now the opening that I'm working with, I want the depth to be 5 inches. That is the opening I'm working with, 5 inches. So 5 inches, I'm going to place it here, plus extra ½ inch seam allowance. That is 5.5. That is here. And what is the bust we are working with? 42. 42 divided by 4 is 10. 10.5. This is my 10.5 here. Then I'm going to add extra 1 inch to the 10.5 to make it free, plus another 1 inch for seam allowance. That is 2 inches. That is here. So from the waist, 9.5, I'm going to add it extra 1 inch as an allowance. That is 10.5. Plus another 1 inch for sewing it. That is 11.5. Then the hip we are working with is 11.5. I'll add it also 1 inch plus 1 inch seam allowance. Then the down, because it's going to have opening at the down. So here I have 13 inches. Then I'm going to add extra 3 inches at the down part of it. Or let me add 4 inches. That is 17 plus seam allowance. So let's connect it. So here I want it to have a sweetheart neckline. So and from this open here, I'll connect it here as the armhole. See it? Then here I want it to have sweetheart neckline. So I'm going to come down by 1 inch. So I'm going to connect it. So it's going to be a sweetheart neckline. So now the next thing is to cut it out. See it? That's the front sweetheart. See it? Do you see the sweethearts? This is where I'm going to add the stripe, because it's going to be a stripe. This is where I'm going to add it here. Do you see it? Here I'm going to add the stripe. So it's going to be, so with this now I'm going to cut out the facing. With this I'm going to cut out the facing. That's the facing of the front. That's the facing of the front. That is the facing of the front. Now let's cut the facing of the back. And that's the facing of the back. So guys, the next thing is to fix our A-line cloth together. We have finished cutting it, and now is to fix it together. Take it to the machine and take in the inches that we left and close it up. So now I'm going to take the front. This is the front. You take the front facing each other, the good side of the material. You know it's a less material, you have to be very careful so that you don't make a mistake. This is the front. This is the front. Then I'll take the back, and this is the back. The front side, the good side facing each other. We'll put it in this form. Do you see it? Then here we take in the 1 inch seam allowance that we left. Before doing that, I would like to hold it with my pins. Added as the seam allowance. You take it in. Now I will now take it to the machine. I'll sew it up, then I'll show it to you guys. Our A-line dress is forming. That's the front of it, and that is the back of it, and that's the hem of the dress. And now at the hem of the dress, I didn't want to hem it because, remember, because of the 45 inches, it was short than the length of the gown we are making, so we had to fold it on the other side of it. That is on the width side, not on the length side. So because of that, we now lost the beautiful part of the lace. Can you see it? That is the beautiful part of the lace. But in order to bring it in, I have to trim off some inches at the down part of the lace. I trimmed out 3 inches from the 59 length it was, and I now added this beautiful side of it, and I measured it, and I cut it out, and I joined it. So now, instead of hemming it ordinarily, then you now see the beautiful part of the lace on the hemming part of it. So you can do it in that form. Instead of folding it, just cut out 2 to 3 inches from the down of it and cut it out from the right one. That is the beautiful side of it, and join it back. It's going to look nice. So do you see it now? Now, so the beautiful side of the lace, the mouth of the lace is also added to the gown. In place of folding it, now I used the mouth side of it to add to it to make it look more beautiful. Can you see it? So now the next thing is to fix the sleeve. And the sleeve, I've closed it up by taking 1 inch. Remember, we added 1 inch as seam allowance. I've taken in the 1 inch. And before fixing the sleeve, we are going to trim off some areas from the shoulder. Like I said, you have to come in. Now I place it in this form. From the shoulder, coming by 1 inch, so that it will be nice on the shoulder. It will not come to this side. It will be nice on the shoulder. It will sit good on the shoulder. So you have to come in by 1 inch. Just take your tape. Come in by 1 inch. From the shoulder here, come in by 1 inch. And trim it off, because it's a cold sleeve. So now I'll now trim it off. See it? Because we are going to work it out finally with bias. We are going to use bias to close it up. So on this side also, I'll come in by 1 inch also to trim it off. So what do I have here? I have here 4.5 and also here 4.5. That is the 1 inch is okay. So now I will use bias. I'll use this bias to work it out, the neckline and also the armhole, the remaining side that will be open with the sleeve. I will use this bias. So the next thing to do now is to fix our sleeve. You turn it at the right side. That is the right side. You take the sleeve. That is our sleeve. You fix it. Right side facing each other. Then you pin it with your pin. Guys, now I have pinned the 2 sleeves. Can you see it? I have pinned the 2 sleeves. Okay, look, it's cold shoulder. The shoulder is open. Now the next thing to do is to take it to the machine, fix it, and also use the bias to tidy up the neckline and also the opening of the sleeve. I'll use this bias to finish it up. Then I will show it to you guys. Then we will now start this lining. Remember, the material is apart and the lining is apart because you can use it to rock different types of lining under. You can decide to use black today, red tomorrow, green tomorrow, white, anyhow you want to rock it, you can do that. So that is why the lining is not attached together, so that you can use different lining to put it on. So now I'm going to fix the sleeve, finish it with the bias strip and show it to you guys. Then we will now work on the lining. Finished the main material, we are now going to fix our lining. Our lining, what you have to do is just to take the front and the back, the right side facing each other. Remember, we cut it out as an off shoulder pattern. That's the sweet neckline, and that is the facing. Take the facing, but before then try to hem this part of the facing, the down part of the facing. You can either use zigzag machine to run it, or you can hem it 1/4 inch. You can hem it. So then you take it and you place it right side facing each other. You take this is the front side of it. The facing you have to use zigzag machine to close it up, or you can hem it with 1/4 inch. That is the facing. Then after which you now bring it to the main material, right side facing each other. By then you have folded, remember the stripe, you have to fold it in this form. You fold it again and you fold it in 2. Do you see it? You can fold it in this form, or you can close it up like this and sew it and turn it. Any one is okay. Then after you have done that, you now take it. Remember, we left 1/2 inch to join it to the material. You bring up this, that is the facing. You take it up and you now put it here on the shoulder. Then you close it up. Remember, it's 5 inch depth that we did as the opening. Then you sew it. Now you sew it. After that, you do it the same to the back, and you close it up by the side. Remember, we left 1 seam allowance to close it up. Then you close it up, and when you get to the lower part of it, you don't close it to the end. You have to give a little bit of opening. You can give between 15 to 20 inches opening, so that the person can walk freely. Remember, it is not all that big like the main cloth. So I will now leave about 20 inches, including seam allowance, for the closing. So when I sew and come to here, I will leave it. When I sew and come to this place, from down measure to 20 inches up. So when I sew and come to this place, then I'll stop and also trim and also fold the side parts. So after which I will now show it to you guys. I'll fix it. It's not difficult. Like I said, just take the facing, use your zigzag machine, or you fold it, you hem it, and now take the stripe, put it in between the main material and the facing, you sew it up, and you do the same on the other side of the neck, after which you do the same at the back, and your lining is okay. So I'm not going to do it. I'll finish it up, I'll cover it, finish it up, take 1 inch side allowance that we left at the side, and leave the opening. I'll show it to you guys when I finish. Guys, our A-line gown is now ready. I've hemmed the neckline with bias, like I said, and also the opening of the coat sleeve. I also hem it with bias. Do you see it? And also this side. So the A-line gown that we have just made is now ready. This is the front, and this is the back. This is the back, and this here, can you see it? So it's very long. So the A-line gown we have just made is now ready, and this is also the lining. Like I said, that the lining is going to be apart. It's not going to be together. That's the stripe, and that's the sweetheart neckline, and that's the stripe. The sweetheart neckline, and that's the strap. And remember, this lining is deeper in neckline than the main lace, so that it doesn't come out when the person puts it on. So now our A-line gown and the lining is ready. The next thing I will do now is to embellish. I want to embellish the neckline with these beautiful beads. I will embellish it with this. This is what I'm going to use to embellish it. Just if you like, you can do it with thread and needle, or you can also do it with fabric gum. You see, I'm just going to embellish it in this form, the neckline. I'm going to do it like this to embellish it. I don't know if you can see it. So I'm going to embellish it, after which I'll put it to the mannequin, and we will see how it looks like. Guys, now our A-line dress is ready. As I said, I used the rhinestone hot fixed chain to decorate the neckline, and also the coat sleeve is also intact. Remember, the lining is apart, the sweetheart that we gave to it. And I'm also going to show to you guys how the down part of it looks. That is the down part of it, the down part of the A-line gown that we have just made. Do you see how it looks? Do you see the beautiful part of it that we added by trimming off some inches and adding this? Do you see how it looks? Our A-line gown is now ready. Isn't it beautiful? Why not make one for yourself? Tag me on Facebook. I'm there as Ijoma Uzoma, and my new Facebook page also, Iconic IJ. Any one of these, you can tag me on Instagram. I'm there as IJ Designs. Please, if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, kindly subscribe. Pause this video and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if this tutorial has been helpful to you, and also put on the notification bell that whenever I upload a new video, you watching me will be the first to be notified. I love you guys, and I'll continue to share my knowledge with you. Share, comment, and also like my videos. See you in my next video. Bye bye for now.